In just 7 days, Cracker Barrel's logo tweak cost them about $20 million in stocks. Man, that's very expensive. That's a costly brand decision that Cracker Barrel has made. And so, because the internet is all ablaze with it, we're going to talk about it. From a reputable source, it was a $700 million brand change. They didn't pay a branding agency $700 million, but that change, as far as menus, materials, signage, and the entire interior of the restaurants, it cost them $700 million. $700 million brand campaign that cost them $20 million in stock. That's how much they paid to do this brand rework. And the number one thing that they're worried about, that customers are up in arms about, is that they separated from their identity. It looked too much like just your average corporate chain and less like the restaurant, the country experience that people expect. Not to mention their rebrand, they removed one of the main characters, Uncle Hershel. Anyway, they removed this old uncle from the logo, refined the logo a little bit, gave it a more kind of modern type. If you remove the barrel, if you remove the guy, they kind of just tweaked it a little bit and changed the shape. And to be honest, from what I'm seeing, it just looks like someone charged them a whole lot of money to just retype something and not actually perceive the damages of the brand. So this is the original brand guide here. And I was able to see the colors and, some of the visual concepts that they came up with. And when they designed the Cracker Barrel logo typeface, the typography component of the logo, so you have word marks, you have logo marks, and the Uncle Hershel, or whatever his name is, and the barrel would be considered a logo mark in combination with the text mark. And that text mark, the changes and the shifts from the text mark went from, they say it's a barrel, but it's not the same American style barrel. It's not the same country barrel. And to be honest, this just looks like someone rotated hello, I'm new tag and called it a day. Now, I'm pretty sure that this agency they hired, or if they did internally, I'm pretty sure they did research and they were just trying to match other people's brands. And so the number one thing I can tell you to not lose your current customers, to not lose $20 million. Now, I will say, stay tuned, because they flipped and reversed back, and their stock is already making up the difference, and people are already jumping back into that bandwagon. It took them a whole week. This transformation literally was 1 week. Literally dropped in 1 week. Man. It went from probably, because the chart here, it went from a low of 51, 52, and jumped back up to 63 in 1 week. Of course, that dip is much more seen if you look at past a month, where it was trading around 65, and then it's now trading around 63. So they were able to get it back, but they lost all the way to 52, 50, I think. Man, that sucks. That's a huge multi-million-dollar loss. Huge loss for a company that invested $700 million into brand, and they flipped back. Here's what we can learn from this for your business. You have a brand identity that's yours. Now, as creative designers, many designers will choose to create you a modern looking typography face. They'll choose what's trending. They'll choose what they've done before, what's in their wheelhouse. When they're doing rebranding or when they're doing branding, they'll create a brand that's sophisticated, modern, elegant, simplistic, some would say, and not as involved or creative. And that's usually what they would deliver. So the Cracker Barrel logo, to me, looks like that's what this team did. If it was just a brand new start, it was just a brand new restaurant, okay, here you go. And that word mark can work and stick with you. The problem is, even though it's made from current trends, your customers will be connected with that brand image. This is why we talk about a brand, we talked about it before. A brand is not just some ethereal symbol or something you stamp onto your products, menus, and signage, and you just call it a day. Your brand is the emotional experience for your business. When I conduct with your business, when I see your logo, I see your symbol, I see your brand, I see your message, I connect with that emotionally, especially in the United States. There's an emotional connection with that symbol, an emotional connection with that brand, and an emotional connection with that story. And the number one mistake you can make is to change the brand, change the typeface, change the message, and you're going to change that feeling. If I look at Nike symbol, which I pray they never change, I want to see that Nike symbol that brings back nostalgic memories of Michael Jordan and Air Jordans and all those kinds of things in my childhood and in the 90s and the early 2000s. And Cracker Barrel has a lot of nostalgic, invested regulars. They're usually older and they're not so quick an acceptance of change. They prefer to be more consistent in their life. People who are older generally prefer consistency in branding, consistency in message, consistency in I'm going to sit at the same table, I'm going to order the same thing, and that's the consistency. And to be honest, all customers who come back to a restaurant 2 or 3 times a month, not even let alone weekly, they're expecting a standard. And so when you did this huge modern flip and change, you altered the standard, the experience that a consistent customer had. When you rebrand, so number one, don't throw away the message with the rebrand. If you feel your rebrand causes the message to change, causes the customers to have a changed and augmented experience and produces an emotional response that's either negative or not the emotional response that's consistent with who you are, don't make that move. That's a bad decision. Don't rebrand without considering the history. The company or the internal team that did this rebranded and followed modern practices. Their style guide was pretty on par with what other style guides are this decade. But the change and the shift that Cracker Barrel had when this modern take happened is it felt to everyone who is their consistent customer base that you gone woke. It's like they took the original logo and just modernized it. And if I'm a consistent customer and I'm walking in and I'm feeling your message and you modernize it, you're turning me away. Don't throw out the history of your brand during rebranding. Modernization is important, and all logos go through a modernization, but there are key components of that modernization that can keep the emotion, especially if it's incremental. The biggest issue they had is their logo stayed consistent from pretty much 1977 to 2025. It went through a color change and some minor tweaks, so it was going in a well direction, and it kind of was like every 10 years after 2006, they changed it, and they went to 2025, which was 10 years. They completely removed the feeling and the nostalgia that people had. They walked in and to be honest, if I look at their logo and I compared it to Denny's, I don't know if anyone knows what that is. I don't even know if they exist anymore. I'm like, it's an admirable attempt, but they threw away the history. They threw away the emotion. They threw away the history, and they probably didn't ask customers' feedback before they dropped the logo. As a modern logo, there's more precision, there's more attention to proper typefacing and proper typography. But when they were redone Cracker Barrel's logo, I just wonder if they got true feedback from their current customers. One of the biggest mistakes. And if I can leave you with anything, so I don't throw away the emotion, don't throw away the history, don't forget to talk to your audience, but talk to the right audience. And by audience, I mean customers. By audience, I mean those who are watching your podcast, those that are subscribing to your software service, those that are making purchases from your online store, those that are walking in person. That's your audience in my producer mind. That's your audience. And when I create something for an audience, whether it's a video, whether it's a design, whether it's a brand, I curate that brand and that image to match the demographics. Now, I'm not always perfect, but then I do something called audience focus groups. And a lot of people are adverse to this because it's samples of their current customers, their paying customers. They're like, well, I don't want to track those customers and I want to track these customers. A very straightforward question. Will that demographic pay you the moment you make that brand change? Or to attract them, you also have to keep the original customers and work with them together, which is why incremental rebrands are very helpful to modernize so you don't look like you're an archaic old company. You know, imagine if Apple used this logo, this original logo all the way now, you'd be like, I'm not going to buy an Apple computer. But it was incremental changes that kept their original simple and kept with their vision. Problem with Cracker Barrel is they kind of just one day flipped the switch, removed key components of it. And the key component really is this character and this outline and this unique kind of style. Like if it was me, I would have probably got rid of the barrel, slid the character a little bit where he's maybe standing or something and he's next and adjacent to the typeface. But I would have kept the original typeface shape, maybe tweaked it a little bit. That's what people are used to seeing. And to do just a drastic change, I mean, similar typeface, similar adjustments, you know, it looks like it's Cracker Barrel, it reads like it's Cracker Barrel, but doesn't feel like it's Cracker Barrel. It feels like a modern version of McDonald's or Denny's. It feels very much like a pretend coffee shop, or like it wants to be something that it's not, like First Watch or something. So it just feels like this threw away the country experience. And they probably wanted to target a different audience than is their current stable audience. And they didn't bridge the two gaps. And in some cases, especially in Cracker Barrel's case, I would probably say, I would advise you to more incremental changes. Start slow separation. Don't drop $700 million to do a brand change. I can't even fathom it. So this is what Cracker Barrel said when they launched their brand. There's an image of a man relaxing by a Cracker Barrel representing the old country store experience where folks would gather around and share stories. Our logo reflects our roots and the warm, welcome atmosphere we've always aimed to create. Still, they acknowledge that Uncle Hershel is not going anywhere. He'll still be in our menu, on our road signs, and featured in our country store. Okay, so their thought was, if you walked in and get the experience, you'll still see him. Problem was, those consistent customers were expecting to see him because it brought nostalgia, it brought emotions that they had with Cracker Barrel's experience, that they wanted to continue to experience. And when that shift happened, it was an immediate turnoff for lots of customers, let alone their investors. Apparently, Trump found it and immediately was like, this is terrible. You need to go back to the other one. And then for a whole week, the internet was a rage about it. Brand specialists, you had just customers complaining and saying all sorts of stuff like you're going woke, you're removing you're removing an experience, you're changing it doesn't feel like Cracker Barrel no more. What they said, right? We want to thank our guests for sharing your voices and love for Cracker Barrel. We said we would listen, and we have. Our new logo is going away, and our old timer will remain. At Cracker Barrel, it's always been and always will be about serving up delicious food, warm welcomes, and the kind of country hospitality that feels like family. All the right words, but unfortunately, let me tell you what inspired that change. $20 million investment loss. When stocks tank that bad, usually people get fired and you undo things massively. Now, we're talking about 6 days. A rebrand should not cause you trepidation for 6 days. But doing a rebrand that doesn't pay attention to the original emotion that you're trying to translate. Remember, it has nothing to do with what you do. It's nothing to do with how you do it. So if you just go copy and paste and carbon copy someone else's logo, someone else's brand, that's not your story. That's not true to who you are. And customers will run from that. That's not an authentic experience. They want you to be true to who you are and make the appropriate changes and business decisions that support the relationship and the emotional experience that supports your why and that encourages brand loyalty and encourage customers to interact with you, not discourage them. When Cracker Barrel made this decision, they disconnected. And a lot of rebrands happen this way. Figma did a giant rebrand, and they also changed their pricing structure. And they, in fact, alienated a huge percentage of their customers, allowing competitors to come in and sweep up massive amount of customers from them because they wanted to charge people. They found a new way to make money. They wanted to charge people for review access. So now only users that you pay for have access to review and collaboration when they used to offer that feature for free. That's another example of ignoring your current customer base, not paying attention to your customer base, and not being straightforward and upfront with them. Cracker Barrel could have said, hey, we see that you've been taking to the internet. We've been reading your messages. We see that we made a huge mistake. We're turning it around. We love that you're rooting for us. We love that you're building a brand, positive or negative, that you're interacting with us. And it cost us $20 million and move on. Of course, they don't have to say it cost us $20 million or $700 million or, cost in stocks and cost in brand development. But I felt like that message was an attempt to be easygoing, where Figma could have just simply told people when they made their change, they could have said, hey, it actually costs us money to give access to those users. It costs us service to provide you better service. We have to charge for this because it costs us money and it's costing us development time and we want to pour more into it. And they could have chosen a better way to do this, a slow incremental pricing adjustment, packages, and then in a year or two, you start individual users and you start changing and shifting how it is. I think that they needed more money fast, but then that decision just drops. When Adobe went to subscription base, they still sold their master suites. So I think the last one was CS6. Please don't quote me on that. You could still buy the master suites. And there was a point where they were like, you can no longer buy the master suites. You have to pay for this monthly subscription, which at that time was a annual contract. And if you left, they would charge you a whole lot of money. They did hurt people, but they had already warmed people up to it for a couple of years before the subscription happened. And most people just honestly thought, this is the way everything is going. It sucks. I'm going to lose money because now I have to pay every month as opposed to buying it once and saving money in 5-10 years or whatever the turnaround is. Most people want to get their money back in 2-3 years. It's great return on investment for equipment and software. Most customers, when they were asked about this, felt like this is the way things are going. This is how it's happening. Now, when a software as a service changes their subscription, usually there is ups their prices. Usually there's an apprehension. So my price is going to be adjusted a little bit to be a little bit higher. And as the service builds and I can adjust, I might be able to lower them a little back. Yes, I do believe in adjusting prices, not just being greedy, but finding a good, solid way for you to make the profit that you need to grow your business, to help your employees out, to be stable, to have a forward future plan. But you don't have to be greedy and, if I can lower this because I have enough people contributing and we're making percentage from all the transactions, we can lower this a little bit, let customers get some more money in their pocket, give them an encouragement. But when software as a services jump out and just to undercut competitors and they release at $20, or if you're a major corporation and you have a business dependent solution, and you're deciding that every 4 months you're doing a price hike and you say the same thing. We're doing it because we're adding AI features. We're doing it because we're adding AI features. And then, not only this is like the third or fourth price hike that I've experienced personally from this company, and then they decided to change AI and move it to an additional cost. And they still have some AI features, but all of the big AI features that I was expecting to be in the bundle because they kept raising the cost anyway, they moved it to a purchase only. As a customer, I immediately started offboarding contractors from that system. I started moving away from it. I think only a handful of people still use it. And I have to tell you, when you make a drastic change that isn't customer focused, isn't message focused, and isn't honest, it makes customers like me feel like you're disingenuous, you're disloyal, and you're taking advantage of me. Now, there are other well-crafted marketing and sales teams that work for corporations that find creative and new ways to sell features, to change current features and make them sellable, but they do it in such a way where it feels honest and feels authentic. Now, whether it is or not is a whole nother subject, but those companies will still have my vote in the long run. Apple finally bundled, you can get multiple devices, 3 devices bundled together in a $19.99 membership. Well, I did the numbers. Now, that's the feature I wanted, right? Because I'd have one that would bill on the 2nd, one that would bill on the 10th, and one that would bill on the 20th, because I protect all of my devices. But when I did the math, it would actually cost me more money. Because most people will have a phone or AirPods or a laptop or an iPad. And if you do the numbers, you're actually paying more for the convenience of wrapping them together. And I opted out of it just because it felt weird. But it didn't make me be like, I'm discluding from this ecosystem that I love. It didn't hurt me as a customer. It was not even a public announcement. It was kind of like not one of their keynotes. It was kind of just dropped on their press page. And it's slow letting customers know, we're going to change this. Here's this. You can keep these currently, but we're changing. And here's this new product idea. And then in a couple years, they'll literally be like, we're going to take all of these customers and move them over here, and we'll make more money. And you'll feel like it's part of the process. It's all about how you approach rebranding, changing services, changing costs. As long as you're true to who you are, you're not going to have a bad experience from your customers. If you're not true to who you are, you're going to have all sorts of issues. If you're not authentic, if you're not honest to your customers, if you don't think of the history and the repertoire that you've built with your customers and clients, and if you don't think about that message, every decision that you make should be surrounding those 4 items. And if you do that, you can save yourself from a $20 million brand change. That was absolutely tragic. This is the Create podcast. I'm also the JumpCutKing, and it's been a pleasure to have you along this experience. And I pray the Lord gives you wisdom and knowledge to pursue that purpose, to pursue that why, to pursue that dream, to pursue and make the right business decisions, give you wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, that you begin to create yourself an advisory board, you begin to find ways to involve audience segments and to get ideas and to learn and to grow, never knowing that you know it all for your customer, but rather being from the side of, I'm learning from my customer, I'm growing with my customer, and this is a partnership. And I pray the Lord gives you that partnership mentality. Just as He is a partner in your life, you need to be a partner with those that you serve. And I pray that the Lord continues to give you a humble spirit, contrite spirit, begins to give you wisdom, understanding, and in all things, I pray He gives you peace.